Welcome back to the latest episode of the Flex Success podcast, where we teach you how to be less shit. As always, we will be your co-hosts. I'm Lizzie, and this is Dean.
Now, if you find value in this episode, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and drop a comment below on YouTube. Share us with your friends, give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app, and if you want to take a screenshot and tag us on Instagram, just do that by putting in @flex_success.
And while you're on Instagram, you can check out everything we offer, from our ebooks to courses and programs. You can book a consultation or inquire about coaching via the link in our bio, or you can do that on our website.
Enjoy the episode.
We are really pumped to have our guest on today, who is not just intelligent, but funny, interesting, and a dog mum. And we love all of those things. And hi, Dean.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast as well, sir.
I feel like I might be a bit of a passenger in this one today.
Because we're going to talk about menstrual cycle rings.
And you guys are just vibing already, and I feel like I might just sit back and just.
You can get your period if you really want to. Would you like to?
I mean, the mood that I have during a contest prep is pretty much the same.
Olivia, we'll get you to introduce yourself in a sec, but I understand you're child averse, and so am I. And I don't love having my period. A lot of women who are really into children, like, oh, it's a great sign, fertility, health, I can have babies. I don't fucking want babies, nor do I want to bleed for a week every month. But we're going to talk about periods today. Before we get there, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
So my name is Olivia Orchowski. I'm happy you let me say my surname because no one ever gets it right. Everyone butchers it. So Olivia Orchowski. I'm a women's health coach, and I work with a lot of complicated clients as far as their health goes, their hormones, what's going on with them. But everything really comes back to the cycle for them. So, and why do I do it? Honestly, because I just landed in it. Like, it started, you know how it is when you're like a new coach and you're like, oh, what am I going to specialize in? Like, am I going to be a contest prep coach? Am I going to be like always like strength and conditioning my thing? And like, you look back and you're like, oh God, like that's not how you go about it. But like, think back to when you were like 1 year out of your PT or whatever certification, and that's what you think. And I just landed.
Sorry, our camera cuts out, but our audio is good. You just ignore the cut
that's
out.
all right. Yeah. But yeah, I just landed in it because the clients that kept coming to me were seriously fucked up. Like, they were seriously fucked up. No one was listening to them. No one had any concept of what was going on with their cycle. No one had any concept of what to do with their training and nutrition based on the issues they were having. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Can you give us a summary of the fucked upness? Like, what exactly are we talking about?
Oh my God, where do I start? It's really hard because every single client is so fucked up in a different way. But if I could have honestly $1 for every client that has come to me that has had PCOS, or now all the clients that are popping up with endometriosis, it is seriously disproportionate to the clients that have no issues. Like, I reckon I have probably 2 clients that have nothing wrong with their cycle, that have like that perfect 28, 30-day cycle, lovely luteal phases, ovulate on, when they should be ovulating. That's like honestly like 2 or 3. The rest of them are just so fucked up with everything that's going on with them. And they just keep getting all this shitty advice from all these practitioners around them. And in the past, maybe not so much now, but in the past, like what they were told to do. And it's like, none of that is actually helping them. So it's, most of them honestly is PCOS and endo. But the clients that have come to me with some serious thyroid issues, and it's like, it's popping up now a lot more because the education portal that I work with in the UK, Supplement Needs, there's a lot of UK people who are now finding their way to me, and it's insane what is going on through the UK with drug abuse, with competition prep, with thyroids, and it's like the absolute Wild West. And I just look at it and I'm like, oh, holy shit. So it's like, now it's this whole new level of clients coming to me with all these thyroid conditions where I'm like, ooh, this is new. I've never seen this in blood work before.
Dean just competed in the UK, so we've been exposed to, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was about to ask, I wonder if you've seen a major difference between the UK and Australia, because the UK personal use of steroids is legal, readily available.
It's insane.
and
It's
they're all
insane.
very, very open with their use. Whereas Australia, it's very hush hush, which is maybe not a bad thing though, because at least you are getting women coming to you saying, hey, this is what I do, this is what I've done, this is what my problems are. Whereas in Australia, most of the women are like, no, I've never used anything. I just seem to have these problems just magically appear out of nowhere.
They're embarrassed to tell you the truth.
Yeah, so
And also in Australia, because personal use is not legal without a prescription, people are getting drugs cooked in the bathtub of.
they're still underground in England.
Oh, really? I thought.
Yeah. It's still underground.
Right. Okay. In Turkey, you can buy it over the counter.
You can.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's actually aligns with what my expectations were, because there's also a lot of intense, and I say intense negatively, in that there's bad coaching, except for a select group of people in the UK that are a lot more aware of what's going on.
And Australia, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I just mean with the level of drug use in the UK.
Right.
Like,
Gotcha.
versus the quality of coaching availability, I suppose, is again improving, like you said, but that's everywhere.
So you, I really want to talk more about your coaching and what you're doing with this ring, but I'm also really interested to hear about how you got here. So I understand that you began your professional life as a model. Can you talk me through the like transition?
So it was, it's funny because this, like, it really feels like a separate life. Like, it doesn't feel like I lived that life anymore, because I've obviously been so deeply entrenched in coaching for like 8 or 9 years now. And like, that's not a long time in the scheme of things, right? That's really not. But it's because it's been so much my life that I'm like, oh, wait, like I modeled and I traveled and I did that. That was completely different to like what we see now with health and with training and with what a lot of people do with their health and training is very different to what you would see in modeling, where it's like that restriction, and it's like extreme restriction, because you're trying to get your body composition to that model physique with those certain measurements. You need your waist measurement to be a certain thing. My hip measurement when I was modeling was 34 inches. Now that's tiny. That's under 100 centimeters. It's very small. And I'm a relatively tall human being with like trucker hips. So the fact that I was down to that size is just like I'd turn sideways and I'd disappear. And that's the same kind of thing that you would see across the board with all of these girls, like all of them using laxatives, all of them restricting, all of them, binging and then purging. It's just the habits that you have in that industry are so unhealthy. So it's like, that's kind of where I started. And like, I had an interest in health when I was modeling. So I'd be helping the girls, and it's like that, you don't know what you're doing, but like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go to the gym. Like, do you guys want to go with me? Or like, I'm cooking some chicken, or I'm making like a paleo wrap or whatever. And that's really where it started. And so it was like, okay, well, there's like these girls need help. And so I'd be helping them. And then when I came back to Australia and was going to take a little bit of a break before going back overseas again, and then didn't end up going overseas, that's where I kind of was like, okay, like I want to start moving away from this. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not mentally stimulated. Conversations, like when I go into shoots, when I go to shows, like it's always the same fucking thing. And I was just like, I just need more. And then I remember I was sitting online and I was like, okay, like, cool, what am I going to go study? Like, how am I going to help people? And like, I look back at this all the time where I'm like, God, you're so fucking stupid. Like, why didn't you just like stick to it? But I was like, oh, well, I could go do biomed and then go into medicine. And then I was like, oh no, by the time like I finished my degrees and then I'm like working and making money, I'll be in my 30s. Now I'm in my fucking 30s and I'm not making money. So I'm like, I might as well have fucking gone and done that. Like, we'd be in the same position and I would have had that degree. So there's one lesson for everyone. You're going to age no matter what happens, right? You might as well like start doing whatever you're supposed to be doing. But then it started there and I was like, okay, cool. Well, like, what can I do to help people? What's one of the easiest ways to help people? Well, I'm already interested in training. I'm already interested in health from that aspect. I've already been helping people. So let's just do that.
And the models that you used to work with, have they reached out for any assistance from you, or are they still binging and purging and restricting?
There's quite a few that I still speak to, like on a personal level, because we've formed great friendships. There's some that I've seen on social media who are still kind of in the same cycles and, you know, still in the modeling sphere, still in that kind of world. But I can't say that any of them have reached out, but the ones that I do still keep personal relationships with will speak to me about it, or like, hey, this is going on, or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's a hard one to leave. And it's like the confidence that you lose being in that industry. Like you walk into a casting, right, and there's 20 other girls who look exactly like you, and you don't get the job because of like one small thing. Like they don't like how your rib looks here, they don't like how this part of your hair looks, they don't like this part of your nose. So it's like you become just like, you're not a human being, you are just a coat hanger, you're a product.
Do you think, this is a little bit off topic and maybe one for the hot topic at the end, but do you see a huge difference between that? Because you said, you know, you're a coat hanger. It's like, I guess you're as strong as your weakest link. Do you see a big difference between that and like bikini competitions?
Oh, fuck no. I look at like what bikini competitions are, or what like the whole competing industry is. And I always see this where it's like the before and after photo. It's like, oh my God, here I was anorexic and here I am competing. Oh, like you're not any healthier. You've just taken like that one obsession into competing. Like your body fat percentage is still the same. Like you still don't have your period.
You're just on steroids.
But you have muscle.
No, that's
You're just on steroids. You're just on steroids and you've just got muscles. So yeah, it's the same fucking thing. And like and that's probably why like I don't have clients who compete. If I had a client who's been a long-term client who wanted to, I would take them through a prep because I know their body so well. But like if someone reached out and wanted to compete, I wouldn't take them on just for a comp prep. You know, there's comp prep coaches, there's you guys. So I wouldn't take them on. But it's just like, it's insane. It's insane what that competing industry is. And like you're standing on stage against physiques that are incredible. You look just as incredible. And then you're telling me like when I competed that my points went down because of my hair, because of my makeup, because of my tan, because someone else's symmetry was like this much better. But like, how do you gauge this much better?
That's something we're always really clear with, that comp prep. Go on, Dean.
Well, I was going to say it's exactly the same, that you're not going there to be judged on what you're good at. You're going there to be judged on what is wrong or lacking, so that can then technically be fixed next time. And it's all subjective. So
yeah,
it is. And the hard part is as well, I think with comp preps is, I mean, this is a sport. Like not everyone is built to compete. Not everyone has the like, and yes, you can go into the nuance of whatever it may be, like their motivation and like their drive, and like, yes, like I got the grit to go through it, but not everyone has the physique to pull together a good comp physique. And then it's like, it's so popular that every Harry, Dick and Tom has been competing. It's like, well, no, you shouldn't fucking be on stage. So yeah, you don't start me on comp prep.
I do think it's easy for people to get lost with, oh, you know, I really got into fitness, I feel better. And then it's almost like when you're in a relationship, the next thing to do is to get married. Like, you know, there's another path. You don't have to. Like, it's like when people start building muscle, getting in, oh, I can compete. And I think all they see is the pictures on Instagram. They don't see all of the stuff that goes into it, all of the things
that fall out of their head, like their hair.
Yeah. Like and it's not that we are innately against competitions, but I do think there needs to be a really good reason. And I also believe that coaches need to take the responsibility to make sure their clients know what they're in for. Like the risks, the sacrifices. And, you know, I'm not a comp prep coach personally because it goes against my values, but I do think it's important that there are good comp prep coaches out there, aka the ones at Flex Success, that do an unhealthy thing in the healthiest possible way. And if their clients are going to do it anyways, they may as well be guided properly. So
But I think we've spoken about this on the podcast too. This is also actually, I actually don't coach women into contest preps anymore, Olivia, because my experience is that they lacked the foresight into what they were potentially going to be doing to themselves when they were using hormones, despite the fact that we would have the conversation around, this is worst case scenario, this is the safer use model versus the drug use model versus the mid-range model. And they always just took the easier option because it's easier.
what, more drugs?
No, or oral drugs over injectable drugs, or non-hormonals versus hormonals, and all this sort of stuff, right? And the path was always like, if you take the safer approach, it's going to be longer. So then I'd rather the shorter one. And I was like, nah, I don't want to be the guy, despite the fact that I would back myself to do this in a healthier approach than most, to then be aligned with, aligned with later on when they're like, I really wish I didn't grow a mustache.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I really wish you had the foresight to listen. So girls is a really interesting one in the comp rep space because the repercussions are far greater.
Because men get more masculine, females, yeah.
Yeah.
Not that our goal as a female is to be like hyper feminine, but I suppose like a tattoo, we can regret it later.
No, but the thing is, like, you're exactly right with what you're saying, Dean. It's like as much as we may not want to reproduce, maybe that's not something I'm thinking about now. Like, 20 years old, that's not something I'm thinking about. But do I want to be doing something that could potentially impact me for the rest of my life, an inability to conceive? No. Do I ever want to do that to a client? No. It doesn't matter to me that they're saying, oh, well, I don't need my left arm now. I'm going to chop it off just because you're saying you don't need it. It's the same thing. So it's like, I don't really believe women should be competing just because our stress physiology is so much more delicate than a man's. And it takes so much less to break us. And when we're talking about the levels that we now have to go to with drugs for competing and the physique that we have to bring in, it's just like, it's not worth it. Like, I see some of these physiques on social media and I'm like, yeah, it's a fucking incredible physique. Like, you look like you're carved out of stone, but tell me what your clit looks like.
Or tell me how you feel. Like, yeah.
Well, no, but this is
when did you last have a cycle? When did you last bleed? When did you last ovulate? I guarantee you it's going to be about 5 years ago.
Yeah. While we are talking about female cycles, because your smart ring for females is centered around the menstrual cycle, maybe you can talk us through that. What made you decide a smart ring was the way to go? Why a female centered one? And
why didn't you make it a rainbow color? No, that one's an irrelevant question.
Don't answer the last one.
Look, I can try and answer the last one. It's really expensive to do things in manufacturing, so that's probably why it's not a rainbow color. So really, this starts with the fact that when we're talking about a menstrual cycle, right? We do have our phases of our menstrual cycle, and the only way to know that we actually have gone into a different phase of our menstrual cycle is by confirming ovulation. How do we do that? We can do that with blood work in a mid-luteal phase test, or we can take our temperature. When we see our temperature spike, that's when we know we've ovulated. And of course, we have to meet certain temperature rules to confirm that, but that's when we know, right? Trying to get clients to take their oral temperature every day is like pulling fucking teeth. Like, you think getting a female to eat 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is hard? Try and get them to take their fucking temperature in the morning. That's a whole other level. So really it started with that, where I was like, I have all these clients, I have no fucking idea what's going on with them. Okay, I have this knowledge about women's health and I have all this stuff I want to do. I don't fucking know when to do it because they won't take their temperature. And so that's really where it started, where I was like, okay, what's a way that I can get their temperature taken overnight, and actually pull that together. And then I was like, well, while I'm fucking here, I might as well make it something else and make it something better, and look at stress physiology as well. Well, shit, we're already here. And that's where it really started, because obviously overnight we're going to get the most data. We're going to get the most, the largest block of sleep, or largest block of data where we can really analyze it and look at what's coming out, as opposed to when we're trying to take an oral temperature in the morning. What time did you wake up? What time did you go to sleep? You know, did you get out of bed to pee before you took your temperature? All of this stuff. So that's really where it started. And the reason it's only for women is because men fucking have enough shit out there. All of our science, all of our shit is built on the male model. When you look at science as it is now and all of the studies that we have, where women are included, they don't factor in the menstrual cycle. When they do factor in the menstrual cycle, they don't confirm ovulation. And that's problematic. That's really problematic when we're talking about anything to do with medications, nutrition. And like, yes, there is like a lot of awesome research out there specifically for women, but to compare it to what is there for males, or where they didn't factor these things in, where they did include women, everything is built on the male model. So all of the wearables on the market at the moment, unless they're specifically built for women, they're built for men.
Even the iPhone is built to fit the male hand. That's why I have a mini, because comparatively the mini fits my hand like the normal phone fits.
I thought it was for blind people like you. Until tomorrow.
Oh, I get my LASIK tomorrow. Anyway.
Until tomorrow.
But you know, even when women are included in science, it's still very new. I remember like first year biology at uni, my lecturer was telling me about female hysteria. So male boners was studied by male doctors for centuries and centuries, but female orgasms, the equivalent, or arousal, they were told to be, they're hysterical. They're not aroused, they're hysterical. And it was just written off as that. Even if you look at anthropology, only males, even if you look at history books, only the males just keep coming up over and over again, history, anthropology, science, whatever it is. So when females are included now, it's only a small portion of science, and it's also very, very new. So we don't have a long data set like we do for men.
And like, I understand it, it's tricky because in the, what was it, like 60s or 70s, when they had the thalidomide issue, where they, for anyone who doesn't know, it was a drug that was supposed to treat morning sickness. A lot of women took it, they didn't study it extensively enough, and then babies were born without limbs. And since
like
then, women became, insane amounts of babies. And since then, women have become like a protected status. And so it's like to get us into studies, you're jumping through more hoops. And then it's like, well, is it really worth it when we're talking about like how, I don't know, random study, how sleep is happening, or, you know, what stages we're talking about? Is it really worth it to jump through these hoops? Probably not. And so I understand from that perspective that it's like, you wouldn't want to do anything that can potentially impact fertility. There's ethics surrounding certain things. You wouldn't want to do anything that, if a woman is pregnant, is this going to affect her pregnancy? If she gets pregnant accidentally, she doesn't know when she's ovulating or whatever while she's in the middle of the study. I understand that. But it's also like this huge gaping hole when we're talking about research.
Yeah, there was a period where they were willing, because even we briefly touched on steroids before, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in women on those, where they've given them astronomical amounts of drugs. Like astronomical amounts of drugs you would never even give.
Are we talking the 70s or something?
Yeah, pretty much 70s, 60s started, and then through to the 70s and 80s, and there's still some stuff even in the early 90s. But yeah, I find women's physiology really interesting, because I'd say, like, I agree, obviously, that the system is sensitive, and yet you're probably the most resilient. Like, there's a sensitivity concern, and then there's this resilience concern, because sometimes the resilience hides the damage in regards to how much you can push a female in the training space, the food space, and so on.
Okay. All right. And so your ring, it takes temperature, and then based off that, you can figure out what stage of the cycle a woman's in. What do you do with that data? Or is it for the coach to use, or is it for the user to use?
Like a little from column A, a little from column B. So we're taking heart rate and heart rate variability as well, because these are obviously huge markers when it comes to stress physiology and recovery. So that's factored in as well. There will be a practitioner and coach portal in the future where the coach and practitioner can access this data as well, and also make their own recommendations. But really, it's geared around that like user model for this first release. And the practitioner portal, I'm hoping, will come within a few months of the rings being released. But really, it's just trying to create more body literacy and getting more women in tune with their cycle, because like there's so much that happens through your menstrual cycle, so many hormonal fluctuations. You can't possibly compare what's going on at the start with what's going on at the end, and how you're feeling and how you're going to be performing. And it all hinges on that oral temperature for ovulation, to confirm ovulation. So that's something like an oral temperature is what you need to be doing when we're talking about confirming ovulation. If you're using symptothermal methods for contraception purposes, whereas when it's like a charting for health, surface temperature is perfectly acceptable. So when we're able to actually confirm that ovulation, like 7 days from there, if you've got a 14-day luteal phase, 7 days from there, you're going to be having fucking banger sessions. Like even around ovulation, you're going to be having banger sessions. You're going to be feeling so fucking good. And then as everything starts to drop off just before you bleed, and that's where it's like, oh, everything just feels heavy. Like you would know what this feels like where you go into a gym and you're like, ugh, it just feels shit. Like it doesn't feel as strong as it felt a week ago. And it's like, ugh, okay, I'm going to get my period in like a week. But no, like that knowledge just isn't there. And it's such a shame that obviously we have so many coaches, we have so many women that are coached by coaches, and it's like this huge gaping hole.
I do think it's important though that well, there's obviously some foundations that people need to establish: protein, fruit and veg, consistency in the gym, making sure we're not just walking on the treadmill when we go to the gym, we're actually lifting some damn weights. Because I do know some people who, you know, are really interested in their menstrual cycle and adjusting their nutrition and their training around their menstrual cycle, but they haven't yet found consistency. And they think, oh, well, if I don't have the perfect training program for my menstrual cycle, like I'll start training at the gym once I know that, once I can have all the details right. And I think it's important that although the details are important for many people, start with the foundations and the details will come later.
Oh, that's everything. Like, I 100% agree. Like, I would never put a client into training with their cycle when they come to me unless they're doing all of the foundations right. Like, if you have a complete novice coming to you, like it's someone who's never tracked before, right? You're probably not going to give them macros. You might start them with like a meal plan in the beginning to get them used to like, okay, well, I'm weighing 200 grams of chicken here. I'm weighing 200 grams of cooked rice. You're probably going to start them there. And then once they build that foundation, you move them on, you move them on, you move them on. And so it's the same thing with like anything to do with training with your cycle or really honing in and working with your cycle. Like, is it necessary? Probably not if you don't have the foundations there. That's something that I only really go to for my clients who are honestly 5 or 6 years having worked with me, and probably like your more intermediate to advanced clients. Can you make small adjustments based on the menstrual cycle to your training while you're working on your foundations? Fuck yeah. Like, if you know that your client's about to get their period and they're a few days out from that, absolutely you can pull back some of the intensity. Absolutely you can pull out some of the high intensity stuff. Do you need them periodized around their cycle? Probably not.
Yeah, even from like a mindset perspective, you know, if somebody does have the foundations down pat, if they know their plan is personalized to them, I feel like there's a higher motivation to stick with it, because like, this is for me, this is going to work. There's a lot more buy-in.
Yeah. We spoke about this the other day. Have you, Olivia, in your experience, found much of a, I don't want to call it a nocebo effect, but where you start to educate women on their cycle, the potential implications that may have on energy and training, like you just said, at this week, you're going to feel like this, and then you're going to feel like this. Have you seen a negative association at all as women become more aware of what to expect, that they actually drive that expectation in themselves?
Oh, do you know, not physically in the sense of like performance in the gym, because like, I don't know, I would say that my clients are like, they're well trained in that they know how to push with intensity. They know how to train. So probably not from the physical perspective, but absolutely from like that emotional perspective, where they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm in my bleed, and when I'm in my bleed, this is a time where I'm supposed to be like shut away from people and, you know, honoring that little cocoon, and like, so I'm just going to fully like embody that. And it's like, well, previously you weren't fucking doing this. Like previously you were completely fine.
Yeah.
So like, okay. Not necessarily physically, but absolutely from like that emotional perspective.
Is that something you highlight to the client? Because I think the art of coaching, because coaching is science and art, it was Jason Galea, I'll quote him here, a good coach knows when to give their client a cuddle and when to give them a kick up the ass. Is this when you give your client a kick up the ass and be like, come on, you can go to work today, get out of bed, you were perfectly fine before we started coaching during your bleed?
I'm not a cuddler in the slightest. Like my brother gets 2 hugs a year for his birthday and Christmas. So there's absolutely no cuddling in any of my coaching whatsoever. There's a lot of kick up the assing. But yeah, very much that's where I would be like, oh, okay, you know, interesting that you're experiencing this, because last time it was fine. So it's really like I'll put it back to them with that question, that it's like, oh, how interesting that you've experienced this. Oh, funny, last time this wasn't an issue. So like more posing, it's like what you do with kids when they're asking a lot of questions, where they're like, why is the sky blue? And you're like, oh, I don't fucking remember this shit. And you ask them and you're like, oh, why do you think the sky's blue? So like posing that question back to them so they think about it. But yeah, I can't say that there's a lot of cuddling in my approach, and okay. I'll be very direct with clients when I say that. So maybe I'm not a good coach by those standards.
No, that's helpful though, because you were highlighting, like, you know, well, the potential negatives are highlighted during the educational process. But if somebody focuses on that too much, your approach is to highlight the fact that they didn't really experience those things. So maybe they just focused on them too much. Yeah.
It's more of like, okay, let's not focus too much on this. And it's like I say to all of them that it's like, yes, here's the textbook of what you're supposed to feel. Here's the textbook of how you're supposed to experience certain things. But like, listen to your body as well. Like, even if you are in a phase where you're supposed to be pushing intensity and you're supposed to be feeling really good, if you feel like dog shit, don't go and push intensity in the gym. Don't go and set a PB. Like, but that's everything. And that's with the ring as well. Like, stress physiology supersedes any recommendation that you're getting from like a training perspective with your cycle. So if you haven't recovered and your HRV has absolutely fucking tanked over the space of a few days, but you're in a phase where you should be pushing intensity, the app's going to be like, okay, maybe take a rest day. Maybe don't go to the gym. So I think over everything, stress physiology will come first.
Can I put a request in for the ring?
Sure.
All right. So I hate it on my heaviest days are like day 1 and 2. And in the middle of the night, sometimes you can't, like if I'm in bed for 8 hours, I need to wake up in the middle of the night and change my sanitary item, you know? But I sleep through the night a lot of the time. So if the ring could, like, I could set a timer, you know, in 4 hours from now, just like buzz on my finger.
Did you just ask for a finger vibrator?
That's exactly what I asked.
No, I think
people would
that's what
totally
you
use
asked
it for that. I would use it for
it's like
that.
you wake up and like your hand's under the doona somewhere and she's, where's your ring? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll mention it to the engineers. I'll see what they think.
A little wake up.
Yeah, just a little way. An alarm, a change your sanitary item alarm.
Would you like that vibration intensity and or frequency to be manageable?
Yeah, if there could be like,
adjustable.
You can press a button and it goes like, it pulses, or that would be great. Give me some vibration options.
Okay, I'll make sure to note the vibration options. Is there like a tempo that it needs to vibrate to, a certain song?
Look, I can do some research for you and get back to you on the best vibration.
Excellent.
I do have a funny story about a vibrator if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're in Istanbul right now, and it's quite a conservative country.
But no.
What do you mean?
No, the lingerie available here.
Oh yeah, well, different story. Anyways, conservative. And we were staying in this apartment, what was it, like 2 or 3 weeks ago? And I've obviously traveled with a vibrator because I have needs. And I was working on the couch, and then all of a sudden 3 male electricians arrived to like change this light, whatever. And it occurred to me about half an hour into their visit that, oh fuck, I'm pretty sure my vibrator is out on the bedside table. And maybe they were laughing about, I can't speak Turkish. And I'm thinking like, what are they, am I going to go, are they going to think I'm going to go to hell? Like, what is happening here? And then I thought, who cares what they think? It doesn't matter. But there's just for some reason, this shame that came over me that I had to reject. Like, why do I feel shame? Because they can see my vibrator. Maybe they should feel shame for laughing at it.
I would feel shame though if there was a pocket pussy or a fleshlight on the side.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just what I was thinking, where I was like, imagine if he had like a flashlight on his nightstand and then you had people coming in to change the light bulb. I don't know. I think, I think like masturbation and electric toys, let's just, that umbrella. I think there's always going to be a stigma surrounding it. I don't know if like you've obviously got a lot of people who are like super sex positive, who are very open, and we're talking about, platforms where they're very open about what they do with their sex life and posting about it. But I think there's always going to be that stigma where it's like, whether it's, something that you can think back to in your childhood and parents, or like, did you ever have these conversations with your parents, or like, was it all hush hush, or like, would you ever talk about, masturbating to your mum? I think there's just always going to be that stigma surrounding it. I would feel awkward as fuck if I was in that situation.
But why? Because like both of us seem sex positive, and I feel like you don't shame me for having needs. Everyone has needs. But then why did
there's a difference between shame and also embarrassment too, though.
I don't know if I was embarrassed. I just felt shamed. Okay, another fun story. My mum found tampons in the house when I was, I don't know how old, 15 or 16 or something. And she was appalled that I had lost my virginity to a cotton tampon. Which
what nationality is your mum?
My mum's Venezuelan. She's a very Catholic
mother. I remember when I was like 14, and it was a very similar thing where I was like trying to find pads in my mum's bathroom, and then I found a tampon. I'd never seen a tampon before in my life up to this point. And I found it, and I was like, what's this? And she took them, and she's like, it's something you use after you've had kids. And I was like, oh okay. So it's like, obviously, like you're not putting anything in there and like after kids, because obviously that's the only time you have sex. And it's so funny because every time I do a podcast, someone will say something and this like deep memory gets unlocked, and I'm like, oof, how long was that pushed down for?
Oh man. Yeah.
I'm one of 3 boys in a male dominant household with a really open family, not sexually open, but like we're willing to laugh and joke about it, right? But I just would never have thought tampons would ever have been something,
a substitute for a cock.
Yeah, but or even considered to be like, I'm like,
No.
You're a girl, you get your period, you use a tampon. That's just what happens. ABC. Like, what do you mean that there's this? There's a stigma attached to it from mothers that you probably shouldn't put something in there.
I know.
It blows my mind.
If you now I think we have 100% success rate here with knowing where that stigma is coming from, and it's Catholic mothers who are from Eastern European blocks or Venezuela.
Conservatism. Because honestly, all jokes aside, there are a lot of drawbacks to having a period. Like women who have really painful periods take more days off work, they're less likely to get promotions because they take time off, blah, blah, blah. And then having stigma around tampons just adds another layer to that, because we already, with really painful cramps, or even just the risk of a bleed coming through and being embarrassed, like through your pants. You feel like you can't participate in sport or go out to social events or wear particular things. And then when a young girl is discouraged from wearing a tampon, because God forbid she loses her virginity to a cotton tampon, then there's even, like with a pad, there's even more restrictions. It feels bulky. You can't wear certain things. You certainly don't want to wear a skirt. I just think we need to be reducing the impact of periods on women as far as we can.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's like a biological glass ceiling there.
So we're not going to tell them to go down to the water.
No, they shouldn't be bathing in the water to get their toxic blood away from men because they don't want to poison them.
I think we're making good steps in that direction though. Like I think that women's health and like all of this period positivity that we're having is really in its infancy. And I think in like 5 to 10 years from now, you're going to have a generation of women who have no shame whatsoever in talking about any of their menstrual health issues or what's going on. Like, you know, bless him, I don't know if my boxing coach has ever had a client as open as I am with my period, but anytime I'm about to get my period and my boxing session falls on that, I'll straight away be messaging him and be like, hey, sorry, got my period, can't. And he's always just like, okay, and sends back a boxing emoji, like a boxing glove emoji. But I really think we're in our infancy at the moment, which is amazing. Like, you know, think back to the infancy of so many things with like strength and conditioning, and like now look at what it is, and like the powerlifting competitions we have, or like the infancy of like bodybuilding, and then like how it exploded. I think we're in for amazing things happening in about 5 to 10 years.
I hope you're right.
Shall we predict what the worst case scenario when the pendulum swings a little bit too far is? Like,
What
what's
is
that going to be?
Oh, okay.
You know, like everything is the movement, the pendulum swings. And it goes a little bit too far. What's it going to be? Or in this instance, it might be the tampon swinging.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the like pendulum swings too far.
Is it weird that I also thought of you hitting a boxing bag as a tampon? I was like, I think this might be the perfect time to go to boxing.
Giant tampons as boxing bags.
Yeah.
Okay, if the pendulum is to swing too far, Dean, I think that men would be simulating periods to feel involved.
Oh, geez, that's not going to happen.
But that's too far. That's what you're asking.
No man wants to feel that.
But you're asking if the pendulum swings too far, and that's what I think is too far. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that would. Yeah, okay. They do.
Well,
I
would
have
say
electronic machines that you can put on for cramps, right? For pregnancy. So
they do, which is great. Yeah, TENS machines. I reckon if the pendulum swings too far, you're going to have period removed and ovulation removed from what we know is like menstrual health. You'll have those words removed, and you'll have like a very gender neutral way of saying bleeding.
Okay.
Like that's if the pendulum swings too far.
Because of all the current complexities around gender, and then periods are exclusive to biological females. So you think that some females that aren't born female, biologically female, would feel excluded?
Yes. So, and this is such a tricky topic, right? Because you will have women who say they don't identify as women and they don't want the word woman used in reference to them, and they prefer something like bleeder or uterus haver, which in my mind is so much fucking worse to be referred to as an organ, and like that's what you are. And then you've got women who are like, fucking, I dare you to call me a bleeder or a uterus haver, like I'm a woman. So God help us. God help us.
It's complicated. Call me whatever you want, listeners. I don't give a shit. I'm a masculine female, whatever.
I love the masculine female energy, the tomboy energy.
I just can't pretend to be anything else. It's too exhausting.
No, I'm with you on that. I've been told many times before that I am my energy is too masculine and it needs to be more feminine.
Isn't it funny though that would be celebrated if you were actually a dude?
What, masculine energy?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that people need to stop taking masculine energy as what's the word I'm looking for? Like an insult. I don't think it's an insult at all. Because if we're to open the can of gender studies just super quickly, when we talk about masculinity and femininity, remove sex, we're just talking about the gender here. Feminine traits would be things like, vulnerability, softness, indecisiveness, things like that. When we're talking about masculine traits, we're talking about decisiveness, leadership, sharp-minded, things like that.
Yeah.
And so I love that when someone calls me masculine, even if they mean it as an insult, I'm like, fantastic. I do think I'm a good leader.
Really?
I do think that I'm decisive and, I'm not too emotional to stick to a decision that I've made. And I don't think that when people call your traits masculine, they do always mean it as an insult. Sometimes they might, but like, fuck, what people think of me is none of my business. But
yeah,
we just need to, and there's also some males who have feminine traits in the sense that they're like emotionally vulnerable. And like, that's not always terrible either. Having emotional traits and masculine traits as a combination is up to your subjective opinion, whether that's good or bad. And I think we all can have all of them, can't we?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people talk about toxic masculinity, but no one talks about toxic femininity and the fact that like, oh, well, like you're a human being that is a little bit too masculine, you need to be more feminine. That's toxic as fuck. So goes both ways.
That's so true. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah.
Toxic femininity. I'm going to be thinking about that.
It exists. It exists.
Now, this has been a really interesting chat, and I'd love to summarize it with a tip that you can give our audience. Would you like to ask?
What, a be less shit tip? Sure. Do we have a be less shit tip for, I suppose any listeners, or even female listeners specific, on how they can be less shit?
Be less shit by being aware of your cycle and not ignoring it. And that's also to like any coaches, be less shit by actually factoring in the menstrual cycle when it comes to your client. Because even if it's, if you've got someone who's got a heavy bleed, if you've got someone who's got a painful bleed, if you've got someone who's got a really long bleed, there's reasons for that. So these are huge health markers that you can be looking to improve what's going on with yourself or with your clients. So yeah, be less shit by not ignoring your bleed.
And what advice would you give to coaches out there who are like, I understand this is really important, but I don't currently have the knowledge or skills to know what to do with this data? What would you say to those coaches?
Well, I mean, I'm in the midst of writing a course for women's like coaching and health, so you can just find me there. But really just start reading. Some of the best places that you're going to find information when it comes to menstrual health is actually going to be not in communities, which is like training and powerlifting and bodybuilding. You're going to find them in communities of women who practice symptothermal methods. So who are using their vital markers, so their cervical mucus, their cervix position, and their temperature to not use hormonal birth control and to either conceive or avoid pregnancy. If you start going into those communities, holy shit, are you going to learn a lot? Like even some of the Facebook groups that I'm in, where women will start commenting about like, hey, this is going on with my cycle, and some of the things women are saying back to them. I'm like, where the fuck did you guys learn this? And they're just average women who are just super in tune with your body. So yeah, start looking to communities and places where you might not have actually thought to go.
Do you think after this recording you can share some of those Facebook groups, and I can attach the links to the Facebook groups in the description?
Oh fuck, absolutely. I'll send you some Instagram profiles as well of some amazing health practitioners and coaches and holistic practitioners who post a lot of stuff about women's health. And that would just be for anyone who's listening, if they go there, to just to get like their mind is going to be blown.
Yeah, awesome. Love it. Look, boys, if you're not coaches or have your period, but you want to learn about this because you want to impress a girl on your first date, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ask her about the length of her bleed.
Can you imagine?
What kind of
like, I really enjoyed our chat today.
What stage of your cycle?
But I just want to check if this personality is at the good end or at the bad end. Can I just quickly just do an oral temperature? Can you imagine?
That's so funny. Okay.
Well, you know what? Maybe there should be questionnaires that go out on menstrual cycle position for dating, just like women on birth control when they find their man, and then get off birth control later on. What was that one? There were pheromone changes in sweat patterns, and their interest in men changed depending on the hormonal status. And then there's a whole bunch of divorced people out there because they've got off birth control when they're 40 and they realize their dudes are feminine male that they don't like.
They only liked them when they were on birth control. Yeah. Bizarre.
Yeah, they've done so much research into this, and it's insane. It's actually insane what they found with it.
Do you want to share one with us?
Hormonal birth control. Well, they found that when they gave chimpanzees the hormonal birth control, male chimpanzees would rather masturbate than have sex with the female chimpanzees who have been given exogenous hormones. And and what you were just saying, Dean, when it came to the pheromone changes, when women come off of hormonal birth control, they're not attracted to the same people. That's crazy, but we'll be here for another 2 hours if you start me on hormonal birth control.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny about the chimpanzees.
Oh,
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but do chimpanzees feel shame around masturbation? Do they hide in a corner?
I am going to say no, just based on the fact that they caught them masturbating in a study.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, they'll have sex with them just in the open in the zoo.
Oh, do you know that giraffes are what is it? Over 90% of male giraffes have gay sex.
Yeah, we looked this up the other day about gay animals.
Don't ask why. Dean's Google search is now a bit fucked. But.
Yeah, apparently giraffes will get down no matter what.
So what are the animals that are most gay in the animal kingdom?
Well, giraffes are the most gay.
They reckon giraffes are the most. I don't know how scientific this read was.
This is a Google search, yeah.
But bonobos were obviously one of them.
Yeah, bonobos just have sex for everything. To say hello, to celebrate because they're bored. They are the horniest motherfuckers.
There was quite a few.
Oh. Uh-oh. At least it's paused. Sorry, the internet's just cut out for us. I don't know if you can hear us.
I have some clients like that.
The internet has just cut out and then it's come back when you said I have some clients like that, some super horny bonobo clients. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's insane. Because some of them do actually track their temperature and they'll log when they've had sex because some of them are actually looking to conceive. And I look at how much sex they're having and I'm like, God, how are you walking? How do you have time to do anything else in your day when you're having this much sex? Holy crap.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, there's a few of them.
Good for them.
There's a few of them. Good for them. Props to them.
Now, Olivia, if you had something to share with our audience that you think would be valuable, obviously we're going to share a link to your social media and to the smart ring that you've got coming up. But other than that, is there something that you'd like to share with the audience? A book or a quote?
Yeah, the book, and I actually remember writing this down, so props to me for remembering it because I was so sure that I would forget. There's a book that I have read by Adam Grant and it's called Think Again, and it is, honest to God, one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And the whole premise is really rethinking a lot of these opinions and dogmatic beliefs that we have grown to have, where we don't even know why we have them. And some of them are like think about the abortion discussion, right? People get very heated in that. They get very heated with their opinion, very heated when they come up against someone who has a different opinion, and you're not actually able to listen. And so that book and the inward reflection you'll have after it of why do I actually think this? Or is okay, I don't think the world is flat, but hey, am I actually open to reading some of that instead of straight away putting my arms up and being no, that's crazy. It's one of the best books. And if you're able to rethink some of your beliefs, I mean, this is what we have with coaching, right? Where we're constantly learning and rethinking and saying 2 years ago, what we were saying, we're like, oh my God, shit, I can't believe I thought that. But it goes for all of your opinions in life and what you believe so passionately, particularly when it comes to anything that has an emotional reaction to it. It's such a great book.
Did you do the audiobook version or a hard copy?
No, I'm a reader. I've got a very good photographic memory when I can see things in front of me. Whereas if I hear it, I'm like, oh, I heard it somewhere. Whereas if I read it, I can see the page in my head. I can see what part of the page it was on if I ever need to go back and find it. I'm a reader.
So jealous. Now that we're
if you
traveling.
can't tell.
I like that you've color coded your bookcase behind you. It's very impressive.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that sucks about traveling's awesome, but I can't travel with books because they take up a lot of space and weight in my suitcase. And so the next best thing, I do a lot of audiobooks too, but I prefer to read. So the next best thing is a Kindle, which I'm getting quite handy with. You can like highlight and leave comments on your highlight and like go back and forth between chapters. It's not quite as good as the real deal, but it's the next best thing, you know?
It's like it's the vibrator when the dick is gone. Like it's
Exactly.
okay. It's okay. It does the job.
It's
but
not like the real
the
thing.
real deal. It's not the real thing.
Until you find the oscillator 3000. then
Until
No,
the basal
honestly.
body ring has like a vibrator in it.
No, nothing's like the real deal. Okay, second last segment for you. I'm going to play you a song to introduce the segment. It's called Hot Topic. You ready?
I am.
Hot to topic, hot to topic. Hot to topic, hot to topic. Hot to topic, hot to topic. To topic.
I'm also a singer, in case you didn't know. Now, hot to topic. We're going to ask you a question that doesn't have a right or wrong answer. This is more opinion-based.
It's got some juice.
Would you like to fire it at Olivia?
Yeah, and then you can tell me if I got it right.
Okay. We discussed it for about 30 seconds before the call. Dean, go.
Amazing.
Where do you sit on the opinion, or what is your opinion, I should say, on women using sex to sell coaching?
Yeah, coaching or popularity online, which they'll later use to sell fitness.
Fitness industry use of sex. Excuse me.
See, if you're a porn star and you use sex to sell, that's directly your target audience. But we're not talking about porn stars. We're talking about coaches. Yeah, you get it.
Look, for those that are listening and not watching, I didn't expect us to get Olivia to curl into a little ball.
She hid her face under her t-shirt.
There's a moment of like, oh, what am I about to do here?
She hid. Oh no. And I say this with I have made, I think, a lot of mistakes in my early social media presence with like things I've posted or what I thought I was supposed to be posting, whether it came to like photo shoots or content or, you know, sex sells, and you get heavily into like, okay, well, like I have to post as likes and engagement and people commenting and followers. And it's only really, I would say, over the last few years that I've been like, fuck, that's just such a shitty way to grow a business and grow a coaching business. And like, it's got no reflection whatsoever on the results you can get clients, on the knowledge you have, on the care you have for clients, on the passion you have for the industry. Like, it doesn't show anything. So when it comes to seeing women posting, I genuinely look at like some of the things they post and I'm like, oh fuck, like it almost feels like you're gonna have this moment of like, why the fuck did I post that? But then it's like, you like, well, no, women can post what they want, they can do what they want, they can share what they want. But then like that inward reflection of like looking at some of the shit that I've posted, I'm like, oh fuck, why did I think I have to post that? So it's almost like some of the stuff I see a lot of fitness profiles sharing, I'm like, you don't fucking have to share that to have a successful business, to be helping people, to be growing a presence online, to be doing all of these things. So I don't know if that answered your question or if that was just a big fucking rant from me.
Well, it's comforting to know that I'm not the only one that's stuck between, oh, women should be able to post what they want and share their bodies because we live in the fucking 21st century. But also, personally, I also feel like, well, maybe you shouldn't, because we're already objectified enough. We're seen as like sexual objects. Maybe I want to be seen for my brain or my skills or my passion, and just selling sex just minimizes you to like the shell of your body. So I kind of hear that you're like, you feel both like me, maybe?
Yeah, I do. And it's just so fucking hard because it's like I often think about some of the stuff that I'll write in like an email, right? Like some of the if I'm writing an email to a woman, like there's often this feeling where it's like, oh, well, have to put in an extra exclamation mark, have to put in a smiley face, have to show that I'm not being too aggressive with them. Whereas when I write emails to men, it's straight to the point every single time. They don't need my explanation of why. They don't need the 10-page paragraph essay of what's going on. And so it's the same thing where I'm like, well, fucking men don't have to post this. Men don't have to hypersexualize themselves to have successful businesses and to grow social media presences or to coach or help people. They don't have to. Like, sure, it's impressive when they have, you know, a great six-pack, a great physique, and they're showing that off, but they don't have to hypersexualize themselves. And it's like that level that women will go to, which again, like I've posted this stuff before and I look back and I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't have to do that. But it's like, you're not going to have men posting a fucking photo of their ass with their asshole almost falling out of their underwear at the beach to get engagement and clients, whereas women will. And it's hard, like, because it very much is that, like, well, you know, you post what you want to, but then it's also like you don't fucking have to be posting that.
Yeah.
But there's also a difference between sexualizing a man and a woman too, in that, like,
well, a man with his shirt off isn't necessarily sexual.
Correct. But also a man with his shirt off is weirdly associated with brains, as opposed to a woman with her shirt nearly off is associated with sexuality.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so like a guy would be impressed by a guy with his shirt off. So therefore it's not being sexualized because it's men looking at men going, hey,
he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing. He must know. He must have a big brain because he's got big pecs. Whereas to flip it and go, the women with the big boobs that are only just covering the nipple, they're also probably going to be followed primarily by men for that in a sexual manner and not for the purpose of what else does she have to bring to the table from a brain perspective. So,
well, I pose this question back to you, right? When you see a 14-year-old girl or 14-year-old student who has the relationship with a teacher who's in their 20s, you think that's fucking gross. What a pedo, he's preyed on her, he's groomed her. When it's a 14-year-old boy who has sex with a 20-something-year-old teacher, everyone's doing this.
But
and it's only recently, but it shouldn't be, absolutely shouldn't be. And even more so when you realize that men mature so much later, and it's really like, it's even more creepy and gross. So it's like that same thing, right? Where like, I look at that and I'm like, that's predatory, that's grooming, like that's a child. And even now, if there's like an 18-year-old, like I think back to some 18-year-olds that I've seen, because I used to work at the door at a nightclub, and I'd see 18-year-olds coming in with like 50-year-old women and like, you know, that MILF sort of situation. And like, I look at that now and I'm like, that's disgusting. And then you'd see like 18-year-old girls with those kinds of men. And then the same thing, it's like, you know, you do what you want, be with who you want to be or whatever, but it's predatory. Like,
well, it is. We call the women in these instances MILFs and cougars. And we call the men on the flip a pedo.
Yeah. Pedo and predator. Yeah.
Well, because we do have this idea that, like, you know, women are vulnerable and men are all creeps, and like, although that is the case some of the time, there's creepy women and vulnerable men.
But so do you think then women should be using sex to sell fitness, or do you think that they should be pulling back and trying to sell?
Well, maybe the question is, how do you feel about them doing that? Not do you think if they should? How do you feel about women being sexual to increase their social presence to sell fitnessy stuff?
I think that there are better ways to sell things that do not involve sex, and I am more impressed with someone who is able to sell with their brain. If that is the most diplomatic answer that I can possibly give. Because like you said, at the end of the day, post what you want to post. If it gives you happiness, it gives you happiness. If it gives you joy, it gives you joy. But there are better ways to do things, I think.
Yeah.
But also have some flaws, because it certainly does work to a point for a certain type of selling. And my major concern outside of that, even if it's not my major concern actually, from a business perspective, I think you have to ask yourself, like, what happens in 25 years when I don't have this body that I'm selling?
What's my marketing strategy then? Yeah.
Like, who am I
Well, by that
working for?
point, well, by that point, they've invested into the housing market, into a Ponzi scheme, and they don't have to worry about their physique. But the thing that kills me about that, right, is because it's hook, line, and sinker. Like, you have clients who buy into that. I want to look like this fitness person because this is the program they did. And it's like, no, you're not going to fucking look anything like that, because for so many reasons, you're not using the same performance enhancing drugs, you don't have the same lifestyle, you're not making millions of dollars from this, where your stress is non-existent. You live in a 2-bedroom unit with a roommate and you're working minimum wage and you're working a second job to try and, like, you're not going to look like that. But they give their hard-earned money to these people in hopes of looking like them. And I think that's what kills me the most, where it's like that reflection of that physique is not a reflection of their ability to coach, and it's not a reflection of their ability to get you results. It's a reflection of what their values are, which is, prioritizing, potentially, if we're excluding drugs, prioritizing sleep, recovery, training, eating well. It's a reflection of their values.
No, that's a really good point. Now I'm going to throw a would you rather at you.
Lay it on me.
It goes like this. We know that being active on social media is a very good marketing strategy for business, and it's a way to keep clients involved. It's a way to, share your values with potential new clients, blah, blah, blah. Would you rather have to get off social media for the next 2 years? No one can post on your behalf, or put up one nude a fortnight?
Get off social media. Like, I'd be happy to get. Can you give me a harder one to compare with? Because I'd get off social media for anything. Like, would you rather have $1 million or get off social media? Get off social media.
Oh, really? But why aren't you getting off social media then?
Because I fucking need it for work.
Okay, but so you're willing to give it up for 2 years?
I'd give it up for 2 years in a heartbeat.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know that there's a key to would you rathers, right? And we had, for anyone who's listening, we had this discussion before we hopped on to record about how passionately we feel about would you rathers. The key to would you rather is always short-term suffer over long-term suffer, because that's every would you rather has a short-term pain or a long-term pain. Always pick the short-term pain, always. So I would rather delete for 2 years than to have to post nudes every 2 weeks.
Okay, I see.
So it's the same thing. Like,
a double lengthy pain then.
Yeah.
Well, would you rather, like, so the classic, would you rather watch your parents have sex every night or join in once to make it stop?
It's a good one.
Fuck. So you would join in?
It's a classic. I just get it over and done with. Get absolutely shit-faced, drugs for days, cover those eyes, fucking I'm obliterated.
Okay. But there's long-term emotional pain.
But what if there isn't a long-term? The other would you rather is that you're in between your mum and your dad. For me, right? My dad's an inch in me, I'm an inch in my mum. Do I push backwards or go forwards to get out? That's not there's no long-term or short-term on this one. There's just a choice.
All right, let's say you were a dude and you were in between your parents, an inch in your mum and your dad's an inch in you. Do you push back or do you push forward?
You'd have to push forward.
Would you? Why?
Because if you pushed back, you'll know why you don't push back. why the choice to push forward is easier.
I'm anal adverse, so I hear
you. Push forward, move forward.
Okay, I do feel like there's no question too tricky for Olivia. I do love it. Would you like to play Would You Rathers with me in DMs on social media?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to think of horrendous ones for you. I like it.
There's would you rather slice all the webbing in your fingers or with paper, or put needles under your nails?
Well, just one needle per nail?
Yeah.
How far?
So slice all your webbing. This is the problem with would you rather.
I know, too many questions.
No, I'm going needles.
Too many questions.
I'm going to slice the webbing. I'm going to paper cut the webs.
Because the needles you'll pull out and then they'll be all right. They'll just be bruised tips. But the webbing, every time you open them, you'll re-split them.
The thought of it, I'm just like, my poor webbing, my poor webbing. It's like the actual thought of it just makes me.
All right, listeners, I would love for you to answer the question, would you rather paper cut the webbing of your fingers or needles under your nails? If you're listening, comment on whatever platform you're on. We'd love to know. Olivia, if people wanted to reach out and get in touch with you either about the smart ring that you've got coming up or coaching or just to follow your content, where could they find you?
The Lifting Doula or FemTek, so FEM.TEK, because someone stole the name without the dot, and it's the bane of my existence.
That is the worst thing, trying to find names. Damn it.
Oh,
exactly.
No. And then they're like, here, for $5,000, you can have it. No.
I'll keep the dot.
I'll keep the dot.
All right. Well, it was lovely chatting with you, listeners.
Thank you so
people on
much.
YouTube. Thanks for coming along for the ride.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we'll speak in DMs.